Okay, so we're going to use our basic skirt block again for this one. What we're going to do this time is we're going to add panel lines in. And panel lines are a great design detail to add into garments. They, aesthetically on the body, they add, vertical lines, which are always more flattering. It means too that you can, like that panel line can be adapted so that you can add flare, onto the hem, which you can't do, like here. If you add it onto the side seam, it just sits at the side seam, whereas, if you have panel lines, you can be very more precise about where you want the fullness to be. You could have lots of panel lines running all across the front there. What we're going to do though is we're just going to have the two panels in the front, and you'll see here, this is where our dart is already. It's off to the side. And what will happen if we just run a panel line down from that dart there, it means that and if we did the same on the other side, it means this central panel here is actually quite wide, and the side seam panels here are quite small in comparison. So it's sort of slightly less flattering on the body to have this wide panel. Because your eye, sits on that wide panel and doesn't really notice the fact that there are these slim panels on the side. So what we're going to do is we're going to move the dart forward so that whole panel line will come forward, which means this front panel will be narrower. And even though the side panel is wider from the front, the side panel will never look as wide as the front panel anyway. So your eye will just concentrate on that narrower panel in the front, which is more flattering on the body. And then in the back, we have our two darts in the back. So what we'll do here, we're going to, instead of using either of these dart positions to run our panel line down, because this one is a little bit close to the side and this one is a little bit close to the back, so we'd have like these very little panels with the center back seam down there. So what we'll do in the back is we're actually going to move the dart, we're going to centralize the dart between these two, so it'll run down like the middle of our back section here and just create a more flattering line. And we'll add those two darts together and put them into a single dart running down the back. Okay, so our front here, so we have our front block, and what we're going to do first is we're just literally going to draw in our new dart position, and we're going to move it 4 centimeters across. So what I'm doing, I'm putting my 2 centimeter line here on top of this central dart arm here. Okay, so it's sitting on top. Can you see that, Libby?
Yep.
So sitting on top there. And then I can just draw that line in. So you'll see that this one runs parallel to that dart arm. And then to get this side of the dart here, we're going to sit the 2 centimeter line on that dart arm and then just draw the other one. So we've literally just moved this dart fitting from this position over to this position here. So now we can just cross that out because we know that that dart no longer exists. And even though we've still got this little bump at the top, we'll sort that out when we make our panel lines. Okay, now we want to, as our reference line for our panel line, we measure across, so from the center front to that, the bottom of the dart there is 4.9 on our half scale here. So we measure across at the hem, the 4.9. And we measure down. So this is where our new panel will be. And it looks like this is wider than this one, but remember that this is on the fold, so that other panel line will come out over here anyway. So the central panel will be wider than the side panel. Okay, so we'll just trace off the center front panel now. So starting at our new middle center front dart arm here, we go across to our center front, down our center front, and then across to the bottom of our panel line there. So we just need our tailor's awl now. I'm using a tailor's awl because these are straight lines as opposed to using the tracing wheel. So I just mark the bottom of my dart there, and then I'm going to mark the hip line as well, and then put a little mark there to show the hip line on my center front. Okay, so I've got those reference points in there, so now I can take this off. And you can see from the bottom I'm going to go up through this point here on the hip line and up to the bottom of my dart, and then pivot there and then draw up to the center front. So now I'll just join these two together. So I've got my hip line reference line there. And what you could do at this point too is there is a little bit of an angle here, so if you wanted to, you could just really slightly curve that off. So it's only about 1 millimeter, half scale, like 2 millimeters around that curve there. Okay, so that's our center front panel. We'll add seam allowances to that shortly. Now for our side front panel, we're going to go from the side seam. Now what I'm going to do, I'm not going to draw in this bump because that dart doesn't exist anymore. So I'm going to draw just a little bit along, and then I'm going to go over to this side here and then just put in my dart there. So I'm just leaving a little gap in the middle there that I'll fill in a minute.
Because we're getting rid of that dart, aren't we? So
yeah, exactly. So we don't need this dart shaping at the top. Down my side seam to my hip level, way down. Now remember too that this is the skirt block. So this skirt block reaches the knee. If you want your skirt to be longer, you would actually add on the extra length as you go along as well. Keeping in mind though that the longer you make your skirt, even if it's got panels in it, the more chance there'll be that you need to put a split somewhere in the lower skirt so that you can actually walk in the garment, because just lengthening this all the way down to the ankle, it means that it would be too tight to walk in.
Yeah, as soon as it gets around the knee, it becomes an issue, doesn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. So just consider that. So I've marked in my side dart arm here. I'll just put in a drill, use my awl to put in a point for the bottom of the dart.
And that'll become like a balance notch.
Exactly, yeah, good point. And then on the hip level as well, and I've already marked my panel line on the hem. Okay, so I lift this up now and draw this in, so going from the hem up to the hip level, then up to the bottom of the dart, and then up to the top of the dart there. And because the way that the darts work, this is actually flatter through here than it was on the front. So I'm actually going to leave that as is. I'm not going to add a curve there because there's really no need for it at all. I'm going to draw in my hip line here as a future reference. And then you can see here that this here joins onto this here. So what I'll do is I'll just make that a nice smooth line through the side there. And you could also check from the bottom of your dart, you could check that these two lengths are the same as well. So this is 5.5, nearly 5.2 millimeters, and on this side, it's the same length, so that they're going to sew together well. Okay, so that's our front. We need to add seam allowances now. So 6mm seam allowances I'm adding to this as a half scale. Full scale, they'd be 1 centimeter seams. 6 millimeters around the waist. 6 millimeters down the side. A 2 centimeter hem, which is the same hem that we added onto our back skirt for a 4 centimeter full scale hem. On the side panels here. And so, yeah, I know I've said it, but I'll say it again. I'm adding 6mm seam allowances for the half scale, but full scale, you wouldn't add 12mm seam allowances. You would just add 1cm seam allowances. And I'm not adding anything down the front here because that centre front is on the fold. So we don't add seam allowances onto folds because then it means that we're just adding in more fabric that we don't need. Okay, I put in some balance notches. So we've got one, we'll have one here at the bottom of the where the dart was, and on the side panel. What I'd probably do here is having a notch here and then a notch here on the hip line and then no notch here seems a little bit odd. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure sort of halfway. I'm going to measure up 10cm from the hem here and put a notch there, and then 10cm up from the hem on the side panel.
And that just means you can balance it and you don't need to pin it because you can bring the notches together.
Exactly, and you've got, because this is a longer distance from here to here, you can put a notch in the middle, and you could do that on the back panels as well with a double notch if you wanted to, and then my hip notch over there, which will match the hip notch on my back panels.
Yeah, on the side seam.
Now just add in a reference for, so I usually write centre front, fold, I'm going to learn how to spell, that would help. Centre front on the FOD. Centre front fold, and then also on the side panel here, which I don't think I added into the back pieces, but you would also then need a grain line. Actually, where did that go? Or haven't I? Oh, I haven't done it yet, that's why.
The back, yeah. So
I haven't done the back yet.
Front
so
done?
Our front, yep,
Yeah.
so this would be cut one on the fold, this would be cut one pair of the side panels, so that would be flipped over here. So that's our front pieces. I'll start on our back pieces. So for our front block, we moved the front dart over to make a bigger side panel and a smaller front panel. So on our back here, we spoke about this before, we're actually going to put the panel in halfway between our two darts. Now what we don't want is a line here, a panel line here, and then a dart here and a dart here. So we're going to add our two darts together, move the darts into the middle, and then make that into a panel line. So there's a little bit of calculating here, but it's not too tricky. So we've got here 10.5mm here, so 10.5, I know this is upside down, but you'll follow me. And I reckon this is, actually that's probably 10, or we could say 9.5, which means that adding them together, it means that we've got 20mm of dart that we have to create, so 5.9. So we're going to need to find our position. So we're central position, so I've just measured between the two darts and found the halfway point. And to get the angle of the dart, I'm just going to put a little line. So we've got the ends of the darts here, that's on our 4cm distance, so halfway I've gone. And then I'm going to draw this down. And what we're going to do, because we're going to combine these two darts together, we actually want the dart to be longer, because if you have a short dart that's very, very wide at the top, then you end up with sort of like a bump just here. So the bigger you make your dart, the longer the dart has to be, so that it eases over the shape of the body. So I was going to go all the way down to the hip line, but I don't think I need to go that far. I think I'm just going to go 2 centimeters down past these darts here. So then we've got 2 centimeters on the half scale worth of dart to play with. So I'm drawing a centimeter on each side of that central line, and then I'm going to draw in my dart arms here.
And Mark, you'd never make a pattern with a huge dart like this, would you? You'd always split it up into two But because we're turning it into a panel line, this is really just a working thing, isn't it?
Exactly. And the thing is too, because we're extending this dart into a panel line, we've got much more control. We will have much more control over what happens down here. So if this dart does seem to be a little bit too big, we can sort of add more shape, and I'll point that out how to do that when we've actually got the panel line in there. But by turning a dart into a panel line, you can manipulate the fullness a lot more than you can if you had a particular dart that you wanted to stop here, because all you can really do to make this longer is to flatter, is to keep extending the dart out, so it might as well be a panel line anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is we'll mark our dart arm, so our centre back dart arm here. We're going to go all the way down. Actually, we'll go across. And what I didn't do was to measure across.
We've got rid of those two darts up the top. We've just got the one big dart now, so they're gone.
They're gone.
And now we need that guideline.
Yeah, so this is 6.6 on the half here. So 6.6 across down here. And I'll put it on the hip line as well. So get my tailor's awl, that's marked there. We'll put a little mark here on the hip line and a point at the end of the dart as well. Okay, so when we take this up, we'll then be able to draw in our panel line. So down to the bottom of the dart, down to the hip line, and all the way down to the hem. And you can see here that there's a little bit of an angle, but we'll talk about that in a minute. The other thing that we might have to do too is just on the at the top here, if I get this, just watch this. If I do this, so I have my dart arm going to here, and then I'm just going to see what this looks like at the waist when I have my dart going closed. And you can see that it comes in at a little bit of a kink there. So to smooth this off, what I'm going to have to do, or what I will do, is I'll come up at this level here, come up a couple of millimeters, and I'll just smooth that line around here. Oops.
Yeah, so you just
so that kink, and so that this, because the thing is, if this is more of a right angle, and then the one on this side is going to be a right angle, it'll have a smooth line as it flows through. So yeah, that's just a neat thing to do to even things up. I'll put my hip line in there. It's just a reference, so I'll leave that for the minute now, and then I'll go onto my side panel. Okay, so starting at the waist on the side here, down to the hip line, mark the point, down to the hem. We go across, and we've already got that mark there. Across at the top, we'll take it across to our side dart arm, so that's this one here, ignoring that dart now. Slightly. So that's at the waist. I'll put a point in at the bottom there, bottom of the dart, and on the hip line there as well. So now when I take that away, I just need to connect. So drawn it to the bottom of the dart and then up here as well. I'll just draw
flatter again.
Yeah, exactly, because it's because it's the side, because we took this out. This line here isn't parallel to centre back. It actually goes out further. So that's why this angle is more acute than this angle here. Now what we can do here, we brought this up a little bit here, so we filled in that gap. We need to do the same on the other side, and the way to do that, well, what I would do, just as a checking device, is not just measure from here to here and come up that amount and draw it in. I would actually take the measurement all the way down from the bottom of the dart. So measure from there. So this is 8.8 on the half. So a little mark there, and then a mark there for the bottom of the dart, and just measure this up here, and 8.8. And you can see it's just a tiny little bit less than this, but it's just a really good reference, a reference check to make sure that they're the right length. And then we cross out our original lines, and they're our new ones. So we've incorporated the fit. What I would do here, like I did on the front, is because this is a bit more of an angle than this side, I would just take the tiniest little bit off that curve there, just smooth it a tiny little bit so there's no angle at the bottom of the dart there. Okay, so now we've incorporated both of them together. I think this is, because it's quite a smooth line, I think we'll get a nice fit over the bottom. There could be a chance that once you make the sample up that maybe you might want to take a little bit more off here, but I think it's probably going to be fine. So we need to add seam allowances now. So I'm going to pop 1 centimetre on the back, 6 mil around the waist, and when you go around that curve there, make sure that you follow your new curved line, not the original line there. Adding 2 centimetres onto our hem, or for our hem. And that centre back there is going to be our grain line on our side back panel here. Six millimetre seam allowances. Uh, 2 centimetre hem. Okay, so we have just putting in some final notches. So this is our front, our side front here. The side front goes onto the side back. We have a hip notch on our side front, so we're going to have a corresponding hip notch on our side back there. And I think what I'm going to do for these back panels here is I'm going to use the bottom of that edge of the dart as our reference point. And just to help out, just in case, because sometimes if you've got this panel and this panel here, it might be a bit, confusing, and you might actually swap them over, even though we've got our notches here that correspond to the center front panel. It's just easier if you've got a different set of notches on this line than you do on this line here for the back. So I'm going to put in one at the bottom of the dart, and then I'm going to add another, because generally it's always a double notch that indicates the back of the garment. So then on the side here, our center back here, I'm going to do the same. So this double notch will connect with this double notch here. Last thing, two more things. So we need to add our grain line onto our center back, our side back panel. And we need to add a zip notch as well. So I've measured down with 6 millimetre seam allowance there, and now I'm measuring down 10 centimetres, so a 20 centimetre zip opening. And sometimes I even write that on here, 20 centimetre opening for 25 centimetre zip. And then that's the base, our zip notch there.
It's good to have information on a pattern, especially if you're handing it over to a cutter. They don't have to ask you all the questions.
And the machinist as well. They should be able to get a cut garment and just work out how it all flows together.
Communication.
So final thing, our back labelling. So centre back panel, cut one pair, so one flipped pair, size, half scale size 10. Our side back panel, cut one pair as well, flipped pair, and half scale size 10, half scale size 10, yes.
And because of that double notch there, if you cut all these out and then the pattern pieces get removed and then you get them mixed up, it's very easy to tell what's what by that double notch. That's indicates that they're back panels, and the double notch is the one that sews the two panels in the back together.
Yeah, so just really important that you actually then, clip your notches, like have them on the pattern, but make sure they get cut on the actual cut sample as well. Okay, that's it.